After years of using Jeeps and other trucks to get around far-flung battlefields, the United States military held a competition for a next-generation tactical sport utility vehicle they called the High Mobility Multi-Purposed Wheeled Vehicle. A handful of companies produced prototypes, but the winner was a truck built by AM General. This came to be called the Humvee and then the Hummer. It was just a military necessity until Operation Desert Storm brought the vehicle to America's televisions, especially Arnold Schwarzenegger's. General Motors made a deal with AM General and bought the brand to make civilian versions for people wanting to pretend they were the Terminator who was pretending he was a soldier. And the trucks were, generally speaking, awful.
This is not that. This is a restomod and reimagined H1 Hummer by Mil-Spec Automotive of Auburn Hills, Michigan. What they do is they take the terrible and highly compromised H1, they strip it down to the frame rails, they remove the entire powertrain and suspension, they replace the entire interior, they switch out the old, sluggish, polluting engine for a modern Chevy Duramax, an Allison 6-speed gearbox, and most importantly, a 2-speed transfer case, making drifts an actual possibility. These builds cost $250,000 and up. Unshitboxing the H1 isn't cheap. But once you learn what goes into it, I think you might understand. Not where we build the trucks.
Not where we build the trucks.
This is clean. Housekeeper was in. So much room for activities. I guess you need so much room when you're building 10,000-pound trucks.
Yeah, that are over like 8 feet wide.
Yeah. But this looks fabulous.
So this is the bread and butter of what Mil-Spec does. This is a production Mil-Spec launch edition, and essentially from the start, we'll take a mid-90s to a early 2000s Hummer H1 and totally tear it apart and essentially start over. So everything from the electrical system, the powertrain, the Kevlar coating on the exterior, every single nut and bolt, and even down to the overall interior design and ergonomics, we have redesigned the entire truck.
The result of all this isn't just a Hummer that is unshitboxed in many ways, but one that's actually appropriate to drive in the modern world. I can't emphasize this enough. I tried to commute to work in an H1 Hummer 15 years ago, and it was absolutely unsuitable for street driving. The hard top speed was 78. It wouldn't go straight in a line. The brakes were incredibly sketchy, and it just was not a suitable vehicle for the modern roads and modern needs of driving. It just wasn't. So this takes that original style and frankly makes it something that's bearable, usable, something you don't want to hang yourself. There's not much you can do about the ergonomics. The entire powertrain, as is one of the staples of the Hummer, is raised up into the cabin. That's what this big hump is, separating the driver and passenger seat. That's the engine and the gearbox. So there's not much you can do about that. But I will say that adding this hydraulic driver's seat, it does make a difference. It gives me some more headroom. It's still not like good, but it's as good as it's gonna get. Oh yes. Oh yes, there it goes. It really boogies. I mean, for an 11,000-pound vehicle. We've brought the Hummer to Flat Rock Speedway, a quarter-mile oval with a figure-8 section on the outskirts of town. You're probably thinking, this is the worst place on the planet to test the Hummer. Or is it?
This is not your dad's Hummer. it's not even Arnold Schwarzenegger's Hummer. This is a Hummer turned into a drift missile with a mid-engine power plant making 800 horsepower and 1,300 pound-feet of torque. It's rear-wheel drive, and it has lost 1,500 pounds. It runs the quarter mile in the low 10-second range and will go very, very sideways.
Now this is something very different. You probably haven't seen a Hummer quite like this one before. This is a 1992 military-grade Hummer soft top, soft doors, total stripper model. And when Mil-Spec decided that what they were going to do is build those nice Hummers like I drove before, they needed a powertrain mule. So they got a stripper one for cheap, and they put their complete Duramax Allison transfer case powertrain in it. They then thought that it might be a fun bit of marketing if they made this thing very fast. Did you know the Hummer is mid-engine? That's right. The entire 8-cylinder engine is behind the front axle. And you can, in fact, lower a Hummer, as we've done here. You can, in fact, add camber, as we've done here. And if you put regular 22-inch 275 tires on the car, it turns out it rides, handles, and steers just fine. More than that, it actually does it pretty good. The Drift Hummer! I give you the Drift Hummer. You brake, you turn, you rotate and you slide. The angle! Woo! Oh, wow. Did you see that? Did you see that? I hooned it to death. I just killed the tire. Hooned it to death. That was the greatest 3 minutes of driving I've had in a very, very long time.
Done right, modifying a car means taking something good and making it great in the name of performance. Done wrong, it's taking something good and making it awful, but for the same reasons. Whether it's the $250,000 restomod or the truly insane drift Hummer, what Mil-Spec has done here is take a platform that was never meant for the street and certainly never envisioned for the racetrack, and somehow made it capable of thriving on both. And who said American ingenuity was dead?